Good morning, everybody. It's Teepa and Matthew. And this morning on Time with Teepa, I'm sure by now many of you are aware there's a new blood test approved. Yes, you too can have your blood tested to find out if you have indicators of Alzheimer's. Just Alzheimer's. We aren't talking about the other dementias. We are talking about Alzheimer's. And I suspect, although it's not clear, we're talking about specific types, forms, sort of packages of Alzheimer's. I don't think it's going to be um, all dementias that involve a combination of some beta amyloid and some tau pathology. Classic formation of Alzheimer's, where we see damage in the hippocampal area as an initial area, and then progression through sort of language center and the idea of prefrontal cortex damage, and then damage in the visual center, but more of a typical progressive pattern, I suspect. But nobody's really saying that will be the most common sort of identifier. What's sort of exciting for many people about this is we can start to identify this before the symptoms become prominent.
Mhm.
And we're not in favor of it.
No.
However, if you can do this, the question is, are you going to, given who you are and what your situation is? And second, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that information, about that data? So something we're doing here at Snow Approach, a little bit different, is that we've been doing screenings this week. But the point of our screenings is, okay, what's your baseline on cognition? Because we believe our biggest challenge here is we don't know what our baseline is. So how would we know if we started to change? And then we sort of also have some health practices, because we do know there are certain health practices that if you choose to modify any of those health practices or practices of life, lifestyle choices, you could choose to make a difference in your risk profile. Now, even with Alzheimer's, if we identify with blood, the blood test, it's like, oh, you're high risk. Oh, you're a high risker. There's still this. So is that going to make you worry that you might be starting to show signs, or when will I show signs? How do I do? What do I do? But also, what are you going to do about it if you're going to do anything about it other than get the test? It's like, okay, so now you got the test. Now what? Because it is nothing but a label, sort of a way of identifying, okay, here it is. Wait, so now what? And I think I know from, and I'm going to say no, from conversations with numbers of researchers, high profile researchers, what they're hoping you'll do is sign up for stuff.
Yeah.
Be willing to do clinical trials, be willing to, take those sort of forward and do some sort of treatment in advance. But the kind of treatments that are currently being recommended, I've got to say, are ones that reduce the beta amyloid load. Um, and again, the evidence that actually turns the tide around, it's soft, and we're really, and that's me saying, I'm sorry, I still think it's soft. It's a personal opinion. It's based on review of a lot of data. It's not like I'm saying no, never. I'm just saying, well, if that's where you want to be, you should consider it, but I want you to consider it with knowledge, not with just sort of a hope that, or this belief. If somebody says, oh, this is helpful, it's like, well, tell me more. And so what we know about baseline testing is it would help potentially me look at myself. And the thing we're doing is we're not sharing this with anybody. Guess what's going to happen when you get your blood test if you do it through typical channels? Matthew, what do you think will happen?
Yeah, I would think, like you were saying, they're not going to share it with anybody. It's going to be kept close to whatever they're doing.
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
But if you got that blood test and it's on your insurance
It
profile
goes
now,
out. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. And what happens
because if I
to,
mean, so are you going to pay for it privately?
and that's, it's funny that you should say that, Teepa, because one of the things that they're talking about in, like, okay, next steps is that idea of, one, getting it approved so that all doctors know about it and will recommend it. Two, making sure insurances will accept it and will pay for it. Okay, so that being, it's funny that's number two, because what really runs the world of the medical environment? Who says what can happen and doesn't? Who's the one that creates? I mean, a lot of the conundrums
the
that we run
atmosphere
into.
of, yeah. And so here's the thing, until we have a better, what's on the prescription pad, if we do find out, what is your prescription? Is it simply to take a medication, or do we have a game plan for people? Have we got some things in our pocket that if it's this, okay, well, let's look at these other things and then let's come up with a game plan that you could live with, that maybe would be something you're interested in doing. But if you're not interested in doing those things, what happens for you? Because right now, I've got to be honest, being labeled as someone who has potential for dementia could be a really risky thing. Because what if you're a medical provider? What if you're a lawyer? What if you're a judge? What if you're this? What if you're that? All of a sudden, doesn't take long for this to become something to be very cautious about. And I'm not somebody who's usually be careful. But in this case, because I'm a sort of a risk taker. But in this one, I think there's more risks, hidden risks that we're not actually openly talking about, because I think that the conversation, the dialogue is coming from one direction. Um, and I'm concerned because I think we should be having open dialogue and conversation about this, not it's a done deal and everybody should do it. I really am a little bit, hang on here. Just sort of like, we're going to spend how much money on Medicare for the treatments. And unfortunately, I am seeing some people enrolled in that treatment who, in my mind, they are not in the earliest states where they would get the most benefit, or they aren't in a low risk category. They're in sort of a medium risk category for some of the meds. It's like, what are we really doing here for the person and for their family? I mean, I don't think we're having meaningful conversations. I think we're having surface conversations. Okay, so that's this is Teepa's opinion about, I'm not opposed, I just have concerns.
Yeah.
And I want to bring them up because I think it's easy to fall into a bucket of, oh yeah, that's a great idea. It's only a great idea if it truly fits for you. And it means there's pros and there's cons, and there's risks and there's that's where you have to decide, what's the benefits for me? What are the risks for me? What could it do for me and to me and for those around me? Um, and what is it really that we're worried about? And do we have a game plan? After we take this step, then what? And in my mind, the then what is the challenge. So I'll pause there. This is not, in this case, this is not me doing a rant. Y'all know that I can do those and I will do those. And frequently you have seen me participate in such a thing when I think it's egregious. This is just concerning. And so Matthew will put the link, the latest information about this stuff. But I mean, it is becoming sort of something that people are going, oh, yeah, that's what you should do. And it's like, I want to pause here. I remember when genetic testing first came out, and there was this huge, like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I know that there are still providers that won't actually make the diagnosis of a transition from maybe a mild cognitive impairment to something truly affecting someone's life, because they're afraid the person might choose to not have life, or become extremely depressed. And so they keep hiding that data, which I don't agree with. But I think how you present it and how you support is vital. And it's extremely concerning that I'm not feeling that same level of, let's be thoughtful, let's roll out a real care planning system before we start doing this. What's our care plan going to look like for someone? Let's lay that out. I mean, there are a variety of researchers who are doing things. It's just not coordinated enough that, for me, that should be a wholesale phenomena. Because I think there's still too much stigma. There's too many uncertainties. There's too many legal issues that we have not addressed at all. The idea of competence, the idea of self-determination, the idea of We barely even frequently evaluate the presence of anosognosia, and yet we know it could significantly impact everything. I mean, those of us who are around, we know it impacts, but we know it's not universal. And so to brush everybody with the same brush or the same stroke is like not fair. All right, Matthew, you asked for it. There it is.
Thank you, Teepa, very much for covering. And really, I feel like this goes back to a lot of what you've talked about before in the past when it comes to articles and studies and new things that we can do, which is stay curious. Stay curious, ask questions, figure things out, start looking at all of those pieces before you dive in.
And I guess the thing that I'm noticing is nobody's going pipes. Okay, let's pipes. Let's prepare, let's initiate, let's seek participation, let's evaluate, let's sustain or switch. It's just sort of like, look what I got here. You want to do it? And it's like, well, let's pause, because in the back of the new guide, or we have these free cards. You can sort of like, if I were going to propose this to somebody, and I'd go over it with somebody, I would want to do my pipes. I want to make sure we're in the right place with the right people being involved. And I want to make sure that I've got the right props, like the information, the studies, and the results. I want to make sure that I know how are we going to like look at this and look at programming for the person. And then I look for some other possibilities of what else might or could we do, which is where we've landed is we do something else. And it's called do a screen, do a little education, and let people see where they're at and see if it made any difference at all in how they're feeling about what they should and could be doing for themselves. And then in 6 months, we'll go back and try again, take a look again, and say, have you made any shifts, any changes, anything different, either good or bad? And how are you doing now? Because it's really living life. And so, till next time, take care of yourself, take care with your care, take care of how quickly sometimes you move forward into something that looks exciting, because that could be amygdala and maybe not prefrontal cortex. Bye all.
Thanks, Deepa. Bye, everybody.